Hey everybody, remember when me and Best Guy Ever talked about Manga Sensei and Made in Abyss and Rick and Morty every single week, and then
And
people
Fate Stay
liked
Night.
it? And
Famously.
well, yeah, every single week that one.
Yeah.
Well, we're doing it again. This time it's Shield Hero.
I don't
A
know
show
about you,
that-
Digi. Oh, sorry. Go on.
Yeah.
Go on.
Oh, just a show that I think a lot of people are expecting us to have a certain opinion on, and I don't think we're going to meet that expectation.
Yeah, I was as I was watching it, I was definitely thinking that you would have some strong opinions. And I mean, so I'm a big fan of the manga, and I've read a little bit of the light novel.
I am also a fan of the manga. That's the thing.
Right. That's okay. So I think I know where we're going with this, but we'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see how
I think we both like this show a lot more than people are going to expect us to. Is what I'm trying to get at here.
Oh, like it more? Well, I mean, man, we'll get into it, but like I've got some conflicting feelings. I don't know. I feel like a lot of my thoughts are nitpicks. The overall story. I mean, what can I say? I'm a huge fan of the manga. It's one of my favorite ones running today. But God, this show's ugly at times.
It is.
I'll just come out and say it.
It's not as good looking as I would have hoped or
Yes.
expected from the studio making it.
The ones who made Made in Abyss, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
Same people.
Same OST composer. And the music's great.
Kevin Penkin. I was expecting, again, I hate to say it, Kevin Penkin, when I heard he was doing it, I was hugely excited. There were tracks that as I was watching the show back a second time a little bit, I was able to pay more attention to it. I did find myself enjoying the tracks more, but man, the first time I watched episode 1 of Made in Abyss, I was blown away. And I don't blame him for this, because a lot of it was how the episodes were structured with that and the big lyrical bits. Never felt anything even close to that level. So,
I think it comes down a lot to the way that these adaptations were handled, because Made in Abyss clearly took a lot more liberties and was more like they tried to make a show out of it. You know, it's occasionally we criticized it for having more moving manga-esque episodes, but those were it was kind of like with Made in Abyss, watching something go from a 10 out of 10 to something a little not as exciting. Shield Hero, I feel like this, for me, these first 2 episodes were a solid 7 out of 10 the whole way through. Yeah,
I feel about the same. Yeah,
nothing mind-blowing, but it did. I mean, for one thing, it's practically a 1-to-1 adaptation of the manga. It basically is the exact same.
I did some research, and I found that there are elements drawn from the light novel that weren't included in the manga. Well, we can touch on those as we go, but for the most part, yeah.
Because the only scene I didn't remember from the first episode is the part where he sits down with the other 3 guys and they all clarify that they are from alternate universes.
That was the first one that I went and looked up. That tidbit is not included in the original manga. The fact that they are canonically from different Japans and different universes, that's in the light novel but not the manga, and they brought it back for this, which is a fascinating tidbit. I'm not sure why they didn't include that in the manga. It's pretty cool.
Well, the funny thing about it is, and what I kind of like about Shield Hero, and I guess I'll get right into defending it. Because when I read the manga and watched the anime, I felt like it was apparent right from the start that there was a lot more going on than met the eye. That right away you've got this sense that everything's wrong and that it's on purpose. So when he shows up in this alternate world and all 3 of the other characters are immediately acting like total douchebags, something about the way it's written and handled, it didn't come off to me as this is unbelievable. It came off to me as there's more going on here. And that's obviously the case. It is funny that in the manga they don't tell you that detail, which kind of clarifies what is going on, why those 3 guys are like that.
That's actually quite an important point, since it explains why they have information he does not have. His Japan just didn't have this particular allegorical game, or whatever, the game that relates to what's happening here. So he just was fucked from the get-go before even getting here.
And just the fact that the game apparently is exactly the same as the world. They make it clear that these guys are so used to it because they're I play this game all the time. This is not even weird to me. I almost kind of thought this could happen, is the attitude these guys have.
Indeed.
Which then creates an even deeper sense of mystery, because if you just read the manga, the mystery is why are these guys like this? If you watch the anime, then it's okay, I get why they're like this, but why did our main character end up involved? why is this world seemingly conspiring against the Shield hero? What's the deal? There's gotta be something to it.
The one thing I'll say that when I first read it, I don't know, maybe it's upon like basically seeing the story for like the third time essentially. I do sort of feel almost like, maybe people will be surprised by this, but I almost feel the Shield hero definitely gets a raw deal, but he's a little bit, like, even before anything truly bad happens to him, he's a little bit of a whiny bitch. Just about the fact that, like, oh no, the guys are, like, they have more information. Like, his internal monologue, I feel like a lot of it is set up to make us empathize with him, not just like, oh wow, we're such fish out of water here, specifically that, like, oh yeah, I also hate these guys. And while I understand that, I almost feel like it's kind of a pussy mentality that I don't respect, that he's so, like, I don't know, he's just such like a whiner in his own mind at the beginning, and that's before anything truly bad happens to him. It's understandable afterward, but
I think it's just because, like, he's been thrust into this situation so suddenly, and like anybody else, it's kind of interesting that the fact that those other players exist kind of affects the way that he's going to interpret this, because I'm sure he would have been freaking out if not for the fact that these other guys were taking it in stride. He kind of is like, he's kind of like, oh, I guess we're all doing this then, you know, like, oh, it seems normal to these guys. And so like when he finds out that he's the odd man out, it's like, oh, well, now I understand why you guys were also okay with this. But like initially it just seems like 3 other Japanese dudes are just totally like it makes him look like you said, it kind of makes him look like a whiny bitch that these guys are so okay with everything. And I think he feels that. I think in the beginning he's like, oh, all right, I guess I'll go along with it because I don't want to look like a little bitch. You know, I don't want to look like the one who had no idea what was going on. But then once he realizes it, he's like, oh, okay, so this has all been skewed against me from the start, you know?
Yeah. That's only a complaint at the very beginning of the story, and I almost feel like it's a little bit retroactive, that they've kind of given him a bad attitude before the terrible things even happen to him to justify his bad attitude. I feel like it's a little bit of, like, sloppy characterization, but then again, and the reason I say that is, like, I feel like they're doing this specifically, they want us to be all in on Team Naofumi, and, like, just to feel... I feel like the story really is written for, like, sad beta males who,
of course.
of course, I mean, as most anime is.
That's the thing. We're gonna get made fun of for liking this show because
absolutely,
it's such it is the. I mean, if you look at 4chan, every post is like buy fedoras for fedoras. You know, like
yeah, absolutely. Although if I'm not incorrect, this was written by a woman. It's by a woman.
It's speculated
because his name is Anako Usagi, and Anako is a woman's name. So
yeah, well, Usagi means rabbit, and I don't think many people are named that. But
Usagi with a Y at the beginning. But okay. Anako, it's a woman's name. I guess no one actually can confirm if it's truly a woman.
It seems as though, because from what I heard, like there was just no information about the person at all. Like nobody knows who they are, and they've like really covered up themselves. So that's why people have thought it's probably a woman. I could easily see it being written by a woman. Like the way that the story unfolds, I don't think it's something that I think it's something both genders would relate to. I even feel like this kind of, because a lot of people accuse this of being like a MGTOW, like kind of, you know,
I'm excited to talk about it.
But I also feel as though a lot of men would not be willing to tell this story.
That's very true. That's very true. There are lots of subjects that only a woman can kind of, but I mean, I guess maybe the fact that they publish anonymously gives them that veil of cover. So, you know, maybe it is a MGTOW guy.
It could be either way, but like personally, I think that the show overall it's fairly romantic. I mean, the main character is a super nice guy who ultimately is always going to try to make heroic decisions as best he can within the system. He's just extremely angry while doing it.
That's absolutely true. It's absolutely
true. He never develops like a fuck women mentality or anything like that through all of this happening to him.
I did want to bring up that one thing. I know we're jumping around all over the place, but let me just jump to one, like the most fucked up thing Naofumi ever does. We'll go right to that because I mean, I would love to talk about, and I'd love if you had more information about, like, the controversy that this show has sparked, which is very different from the controversy that, like, Goblin Slayer had. It's a different style, and I'm not really sure how widespread it is, though I've heard the sentiment. But the worst thing that Naofumi ever does is purchase a slave of what's-her-face, Rough Talia. And
it's
Yeah, go
it's
ahead.
so clear that he does it because A, he has no other option, and B, she's about to die. Like, she's a malnourished child slave who's not helpful to anybody, who the guy tells him is like, yeah, she's not gonna last long, and so he clearly buys her to save her.
Okay,
you know?
I understand why you might think that, but okay, I went back and I read the manga and the light novel to check on this, and here's the thing. When he's buying a slave, when he's picking out which one, he's shown like big, strong wolf men who are really powerful. He there's a whole he could choose any one of those. The reason he chooses Raphtalia, and this is telling, is he has an inner monologue that was cut from the anime. They didn't want people to hear this, but in the manga and the light novel, he thinks to himself, "Oh, look at her. If I have her as a slave, she kind of looks like that girl. It'll almost be like I have that girl as my slave." That's why he picks.
True?
That is really what I looked it up, dude. 100%. He chooses this girl.
Okay,
dude, he goes into getting a slave thinking, he says to him, "I don't want a female. I don't want a female. I want a man because I've got issues with women." Understandable. But he chooses a woman specifically so he can project his hatred of this particular woman onto this. And he says, like, she shares a sex with this woman. Oh, that makes me so mad about her, but I'm going to pick her.
Well, that's very different from how the anime presents it, for sure.
Indeed, they just cut that line so that
even
they don't.
Even the manga, I don't remember being that.
Dude, I don't remember in the manga, but I went back. It is there. It's in the manga and the light novel. Isn't it? Isn't it? Yeah.
Because in the anime, they present it like that the guy shows him the wolf man, and he says, "Oh, you're showing me the most expensive one, knowing I can't afford it."
Right.
And then he says, like, well, it's kind of implied that not only is this the only one he can afford, but that he's buying her partially to save her life. And, like, the way that all incarnations end up displaying their relationship, like, he's never mean to her. He's never. Like, so it's kind of funny that they would even throw that in, perhaps just to make it darker.
I think so.
And ultimately, I'm okay with that. Like, I don't think I need to agree with this hero or think that everything he does is right to find this story interesting. That's the thing that bothers me about all these types of controversy. Even in the case of Goblin Slayer, like, I was not a fan of the rape scene in Goblin Slayer because I just thought it sucked. Like, I don't care that there was a rape scene because it's like, well, it's a thing that happens. Like, why wouldn't it be in a story? Like,
yes.
Are we meant to not display, like, that's just the universe the story is set in. It's very dark and fucked up. If that is not a story you'd want to consume, don't watch it, And even if they are trying to gratify you sexually, if that's not comfortable to you, don't watch it. In this case, like, if you don't want to watch a main character who is a weird MGTOW, don't watch it. You don't have to feel the way he feels in order to watch his story and get something out of it.
And even if you, like, whatever, even if you hate like his approach to everything, like if this is a fictional story, you do not need to be fully on board the morality of the main character. I mean, the point of this character, he's been pushed into this situation, and, like, I don't know, let's say you were brought to a fantasy world. I don't know, just to flip it, if you were a woman brought into a fantasy world, you had a specific power. It was a patriarchy instead of the matriarchy that's here. And, like, whatever, they used men issues to, like, fuck you over. Like, I would certainly understand why someone might have issues with, like, the opposite gender there. And so it's a matter of empathy. Are you able to empathize with the justifications of this character, even if, like, we know it's wrong to just, like, to own slaves, to, like, it's not objectively good to have hatred of women, which I don't even think he really has. It's just that he's developed a bit of a,
he gets hurt really bad in this episode, and that's, I mean, if you listen to, you and I have both heard MGTOWs, and for anybody who doesn't know what we're talking about, MGTOW is Men Go Their Own Way. It's like a sect of, I guess would you put them under the blanket of MRAs, or is it just like its own thing?
It's like, I mean, it's technically, I think they would protest to being grouped in the same category, but they're in the same manosphere in general, I guess. The
manosphere, exactly. So MGTOWs are people who are like, they want to be men without women, just cut women out of their lives entirely.
Right.
And when you listen to them talk, oftentimes the people who feel that way are people who've had things like this happen to them.
Indeed.
And that is understandable, because that is what psychological damage is like someone, you've been hurt, you react in maybe not the healthiest way, but I mean, who the fuck is there to guide you? You know,
yeah, this guy's on his own. So
this guy's in a situation where everyone's against him, and like this isn't even like a thing of like, oh, women are like this. It's like, no, she is the fucking princess. Like, this is a setup by the government. This is all to fuck him. Like,
in time, we find that out. Yeah.
Right. Well, and I think it's like, even from the beginning, it's pretty obvious that it's not just this woman acting of her own accord. It's like everyone's trying to fuck him from the start. There's clearly something wrong.
Yeah, at the very minimum, there's just prejudice against the SHIELD hero from the start.
Right. That it's so, the way it's presented, it's like, because there's no reason given. It's like, people are like, oh, SHIELD hero, but like, if it was just that, then they would just treat him like a joke. They would just be like jabbing him and making fun of him. But like, the way the king goes out of his way to ignore him and to not even like believe that he has any potential, to just like totally shove him aside, it's so like, I almost think of it like as a horror scenario. Like, it gives me the creeps.
It's a social horror scenario, absolutely.
Right.
Frankly, all false accusations are like real life relationship horror scenarios. It can't get much worse.
Yeah, and personally, like, maybe I have a persecution complex or something, but like, I relate to this show really hard. Like, that's why I like it so much, is that feeling of like, I showed up in this world not of my own accord, with no idea what was going on, and everybody else seems to know what's going on, and they're all beating up on me for reasons I don't understand.
Sure.
Like, that's how I see the plot of this show, and like who it's meant to appeal to is like, if you feel as though, because I mean, you know, I could draw parallels to just the way I feel about living on planet Earth.
Right.
I was born, I didn't know what I was supposed to do. Everyone else seemed to know what they're supposed to do. But like, you know, because I am awkward, I am now thrust into the position of having to defend myself, of having to live in this world anyway. There's no escape. He can't leave. You know, the king just straight up tells him, like, yeah, you're not leaving until you accomplish something. And he's like, well, I guess if I'm going to be a renegade from society, then I'm just going to do everything my own way and fuck all of you. You know?
Yeah,
and that's why I love him. That's why it's so easy to get behind him for me.
He goes full libertarian, and it's fucking great.
And the fact that he just like carries monsters on his body and just he just like puts monsters on the faces of merchants and is just like, yeah, don't give me a raw deal. Like, if you try to fuck me, I'm gonna fuck you twice as hard.
He's had no choice but to leverage whatever weapons he can obtain in order to survive, and just so he can do he doesn't even want to be doing this. He wants to be gone, but he's forced to do it. So yeah, and I just love that detail of so he's the SHIELD hero, got no offensive capabilities, can't even hold a weapon. I wonder if he can fucking hold a knife while he's cutting his dinner. I don't know. But
that's a good question.
I don't know. That. And fucking he uses like the monsters out in the field. This is one of my favorite things about him early on this series. Like, his defensive capabilities are so strong, enemy monsters can just bite onto him, and then he can use those as weapons. Man, that's dope. Right. That's creative thinking. That's smart. Using tools available to him.
I definitely think that the whoever wrote this, I think they approached it like, hey, what if I wrote a hero who had no offensive capabilities? Yeah. How can I take that as far as possible? Like,
it's a Socratic exercise, basically, of what would be, you know, if you were in this fantasy world with these limitations, and it's pretty damn consistent.
And it's really appealing to me as somebody who's like a big fan of like Dark Souls, and I've watched people do like shield only runs. Yeah, you know, it's like this is because it's presented that way, where you see the other characters, like, because they can kill enemies, they level up mega fast, and he's like he gains like 1 HP per hour, you know, because he has to like whittle these things down and like can't really do anything. So and that's what it's like if you try to do like a level 1 run of a game, like a shields only run of Souls. It's like you just have to spend an absurd amount of time to kill anything, and grinding and grinding and grinding so that you can be strong enough. And like, you know, it's a way that games are played that isn't explored much in anime, especially isekai, where most isekai shows start the main character off stupid overpowered. And you could argue that he is pretty overpowered in that he has so much defensive capability, but like, you know, he still is starting from the bottom and having to work his way up, and he literally can't even fight his own battles.
Yeah, it's fucked. And man, just The issue of like he's forced into a situation where everyone hates him. He's not able to form a party. Nobody trusts him. He's been betrayed by everyone, and yet he is forced to rely on others. Like, if he was the sword guy, he'd be Gucci, fam. Wouldn't be an issue. He could fucking solo. But because he's... And this is why I really like the fucking entire narrative of the show. He's, like, it's kind of a romantic notion. We're human beings. We're social animals. We're forced to work together. We're forced to be with each other. We have to find ways to make it work. And that's why capitalism, baby, is the way to go. We got competitive markets going up in this bitch. Fucking libertarian for life. I don't know. It's just it's pretty cool to see it in action. Where did all that come from? I mean, he's a fucking capitalist. That's what he's doing. Earning money is like a major thing that he does. Like bartering takes up a huge amount of this guy's time, and I fucking love it. It's dope as hell. That's real shit. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but that is actually true.
I see what you're saying in the sense, and I just made a video. Did you watch my Preach Success Strategies video?
I did. I liked it a lot.
Yeah. So, like, yeah, he's in that situation where it's like, there is nobody's going to take care of him. So it's like, no matter how fucked he is, like, at the end of the day, the only way to win is to just do whatever you can.
He could
like,
either sit around and
cry forever and do whatever you can.
He could cry about being persecuted, about having the shittiest weapon, about how he has to rely on people, but he just mans up. And in fact, if I had one criticism for the show, it's a little bit of he switches real fucking fast between like helpless newbie and then once he accepts that like I've got no one, he almost becomes hyper competent really damn fast.
You know,
I don't know.
I kind of get it because he is divorced from his own world, and so it's like any isekai show, there is that starting over element of like, yeah, I was just some otaku back in my world, but here again, because he does have such defensive capability, he at the very least he knows nobody's going to kill him, either because they can't or because they know he is important. He's one of the 4 heroes. So it's like, in many ways, he does have carte blanche to act however he wants in this world.
That is sort of true, yeah.
This is like, you know, if what I could kind of consider the otaku hero mindset, and like why isekai, like why they always take our otaku heroes to another world is that otaku tend to be people who have a vision for how they would fix the world. It's like, oh, if all of society stopped doing this, if we stopped, you know, if we rearranged our resources in this way, then everything would work. But there's no way for me to do that as just some otaku, you know, being the nail that's hammered down for sticking out. Like, this is explicitly what No Game No Life is about, for instance, where they're like, oh yeah, we could solve the world in 5 minutes, but the world doesn't operate on logic. So then they get put into a world that operates purely on logic, and so they're able to change everything. So this character he's sort of in a similar position, and granted, they could have done more to like maybe suggest that he was a smart gamer, you know, like maybe because he doesn't even seem like he's that much of a gamer or anything in the start. He describes himself as pretty average.
He's distinctly not a NEET. By the way, did you catch the weird story about how he? So there was a little bit of this in the anime, but I went back and looked at the light novel because none of this was in the manga. There's a story about how he kind of came to his current situation where he was like the fuck up of the family. He just wasn't that great. He's in college now or whatever. His little brother was a straight A student, but started fucking up. And Naofumi deduces that the reason for this was because his parents put too much pressure on the little brother to be perfect and succeed because their older son, you know, wasn't doing that great or whatever. Right. So what he does is he introduces his younger brother, who's like a Chad, to like a dating sim, like the otaku lifestyle. And by finding he calls himself like a pleasure expert or like a diversion expert or whatever. By introducing,
why didn't they mention all that in the anime? Because they just had like one line about it. It was really weird.
And it was very strange. And actually, I like in the anime, this is what got me intrigued. As he's walking past the room, as he's still in the real life, he mentions how he quote unquote like saved his brother. And he walks past a room and we see some otaku shit. And I was like, what is this implying? So I had to go find out. And what it's saying is that his brother was like a straight A student, but he had too much pressure. So his older brother Naofumi introduced like pleasure into his life with like erogaze and otaku shit, and that supplied a release valve of the pressure that allowed him to like redouble his efforts and concentrate on his schoolwork and like be a fucking superstar student. So despite now being an otaku, so that's an interesting backstory.
Maybe that is to suggest that he has that kind of ability, that kind of management of human resources ability.
I think it's implying that like he knows like eroge or like otaku shit on such a level he could detect when it would be helpful for his brother and like would provide.
I mean, that's another big element of these isekai otaku media. You've got shows like Outbreak Company where it's about a portal between Japan and another world opens up, but in that other world they've got like slavery and stuff, and like half elves are mistreated, so they bring an otaku to that world to like teach them through anime and manga how to be better people.
Okay.
So I think it's like going for the same kind of thing as that
yeah,
there's always this sort of pride. There's like always this pride that otaku media, because it mostly preaches like something like Gurren Lagann obviously preaches like how to make a better functioning society and how to be a good person. And so like now there's anime that are like, anime's been teaching this lesson all along, we could take this to another world and it would all work out there. It's
interesting though, because definitely what we're seeing at the beginning of the show is, and characters comment on this, like the weapon shop guy, that like it appears that this fucked up world has immediately corrupted Naofumi, which the country they're in, it's a matriarchy that's neutral, not necessarily good or bad, but like it's they call it a human supremacist nation where demi-humans are enslaved. The worst crime, this is funny, the worst crime you can commit is even sexually assaulting a woman. God, this guy's a fucking MGTOW for sure. Whoever wrote this is absolutely a MGTOW. I've got no doubt in my mind. Because like I don't know what else would that be implying other than like he's like, okay, you get my point. And we see that he just buys into the whole like slavery system immediately, and sure, he does it for the greater good, but I think a lot of people, I haven't seen this, but I assume a lot of people are a little uncomfortable with the whole slavery thing going on in the show, and how our character like it participates in the system, and it is racially based, like the one in America. It's not based on like you lost a battle. It's specifically racially based. So I certainly get.
I get why it would make people uncomfortable, but like I think that's the point. Like this is a dark, shitty place. They have slaves. This character has no other, like literally no one in society will help him and he can't fight by himself. So like who could he possibly make fight for him? A slave. And if you're gonna pick a slave, pick one who is like would be better off working for you. Like this girl literally explicitly will die soon.
That's true.
She's like, she's small, she's sickly, she has no family, she's going to go out. And like the fact that he had more fucked up reasons for picking her is interesting that they threw that in, because they didn't have to.
Yeah.
Like they could have gotten away with making it seem more innocent than
as they did in the anime.
But yeah, they even having that on top of it.
Like, his top priority has to be, like, this needs to be a functional slave who can help me fight.
Right.
So, of course, that's still a valid concern.
Yeah, and, like, so, and, once he has her, like, because of the fact that he has kind of this, like, diplomatic immunity, like, he aggressively takes her to cafes where they say no demi-humans, feeds her food that demi-humans would never get to eat, like, armors her well, treats her well, like tries to teach her to believe in herself and to not have a slave mentality.
That's
like,
true. That's true.
And it makes me think back, like there were, even back in like in American slavery times, like there were people who worked in that way to try to free slaves, like to try to educate them and like, help them escape from slavery. And I think it's pretty clear that, when he, like, I think that he's doing this in such a way that will ultimately benefit her. And when she, at some point he basically tells her in episode 2, like, well, if you can't fight, then I'm just gonna have to free you and you're just gonna be like back on your own, you know?
And
like
that's an interesting moment. His reasons for doing so are very understandable, because he has to defend the world. And I like the way that he frames it to her, like, you need to help me so that no one ever has to suffer the way you did ever again. That's a very good way, and we can see that that's what actually motivates her.
Because he clearly, he wants her to not be fighting because he's telling her to. Like, he knew he would have to do that in the beginning because she's not going, like, of her own accord, she wouldn't fight this way. But, like, if he can teach her enough so that she's confident and then give her reason, then, like, I think that the number one thing that people need in order to live is purpose. People need to have something they're fighting for. They need to have a reason to live, or else they become depressed and they can't get anything done, you know? And there are people who live in low stations of life who, if they have a sense of purpose, will still be able to continue fighting, you know?
Yeah.
And, like, he sees this girl and he's like, look, if you can't fight for me, you are useless to me, and I will just... you know, I'll just free you. You'll be free to do whatever you want. But, like, what the fuck are you gonna do? You could fight for me. You could kill these monsters and make it so nobody ever has to suffer like you again. You will have purpose. You know I'm going to take good care of you. You know, like, because she thinks back. She's like, well, I know I trust this guy. I know I like this guy. And, yeah, I don't want this to happen to anybody else. So, fuck it. I guess this is what my life is now.
And it should be noted that it's true he had ordered her to do things up to that point. But when with the dog that and she is, you know, fighting her childhood trauma because it was this dog that killed her parents, or a very similar one. He deliberately removes the command to stay and fight, and so she chooses herself to stay and to help him at that moment. So that was not motivated by that. And I really like that
they pulled out all the stops to make it like right away she has to fight like her worst fear.
Yeah,
it's like,
which is
this
good. We're
is
getting
the
right
same
to it.
kind of monster that killed your parents. So like, if she can do this, it's like the sky's the limit from here. You know?
Absolutely. And you know, this brings up a topic that I've been more and more thinking about lately. It's the concept of anti-fragility. And it's that, like, so what helicopter parents have done to the millennial generation a lot, the effect of being too
we're pulling
loving.
out all the buzzwords on this podcast.
I know we are, but it's true. Like, this guy, I watched a Joe Rogan podcast with Jonathan Haidt where he talks about anti-fragility, and it's just that it's just tough love essentially, but it's just a fancier word for it. And it's just what have we done to the world and to people by making lives comfortable, taking away what do they call it, like bulldozer parents who like remove all obstacles from a child. Children need to grind issues to gain EXP, to level up and face life's challenges with like rigidity and toughness and power. And like, is it truly for the best for your child, or for your fucking slave or your party member or whatever, to just like not do anything to challenge them, but like removes them of pain in the here and now? Or is it best to give them challenges, give them purpose, and let them obtain resistance and resilience to life?
I think the problem we've had is that, like, it's just that in human history, the ways that we went about doing that were wrong-headed
and wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, like, we look at it now and it's like, it's an overcorrection in the other direction. It's like, well, we all did it wrong before, so now we're just going to make everything easy. It's like, well, you need a balance. Like, just come up with ways to challenge your kids that aren't abusive.
That's the thing. We have to find that even
but that's not relevant
place
to this show.
No. But I mean, it's the same concept of like it's that people criticizing him for like forcing her to do anything, which honestly I haven't even heard. I'm talking to a straw man right now. But if anyone were, I could see someone doing that, and if they did, I would say that, like, what's best for this person, for this slave of his, to just leave her with her, like, trauma her whole life to never overcome it? Because, I don't know, like, psychologists, I've heard discussion of this. The way that people get over trauma is to confront it little by little. It's not to isolate them from it forever and just hope they never come in contact, because you'll never be a functioning person that way, and you'll always have these issues. So, I don't know.
The funny thing about this is that I feel like this show went out of its way to make this as easy as possible to swallow.
Yeah.
Like, that, like,
well,
there are ways that this could have been done where it would have been a much bigger moral question if, like, the personalities or the life situations of the people involved had been different.
Yeah.
So it's funny to me that there even is a controversy when they went so far out of their way to make it defensible. You know?
I mean, do I think that just bringing up concepts like, you know, false rape accusations and slavery are those buzzwords that could get people talking? Of course. But the show, if you pay any attention to the narrative, it totally makes sense and is not unreasonable.
I just have to wonder, like, are we not allowed to have any show where false rape accusations like this happen when it does happen in reality?
Let's talk about that.
You know?
So okay, some people I know are mad about the rape accusation thing being included as a plot element. Okay, first of all, we have to all admit that false rape accusations do happen, of course, and that toxic femininity, in the sense of, like, one can use femininity to, like, manipulate, do bad things, that is real. It is real, okay? Everyone in the world agrees? Okay, great. Now that we've done that, we can decide, is it like wrong to include it in a show? And I think the reason someone might think that it's wrong is because that person might argue, well, you know, it's such a small issue to highlight it as if it was something that could happen.
It's not a small issue, though. It's something that happens every day to people. It's like in the same. I understand. Like this is kind of. I'm about to make like a total MRA argument, but
okay. I'm ready
because basically what men's right activism is about is to remind you that yes, all of the problems facing women are real and true and should be talked about. That should not come at the cost of talking about the things that happen to men.
Seems reasonable.
Know? And like this is not something that's like in every show. It's not like there's constantly shows coming out where guys get accused of false rape accusations and that ruins their lives. It's like it's something that happens to real people. It should be addressed in media, and like the fact that like I could see people saying like, oh well, why fixate on that when there's so much worse problems facing women? Make other shows that tackle
you can make that argument about any point ever.
I will always say that like there should every single perspective, every single issue should be covered by media. If something's not being covered enough, that's a problem of not enough people creating. It's not a problem of the things being created not addressing the problems you want them to address. Because people are going to write about the stuff that affects them, that they think about, that, you know, that is important in their lives. And maybe something like this happened to the author, or maybe it happened to somebody they know. It could be like I still would be willing to believe that this is a female author because I know women who are more upset at other women for stuff like this than any man has ever been.
Imagine that you're a woman and this happens to your father. Like, just imagine that happen. And, now I get it. Okay, understood. This is not good. We can't be having this anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be fucked up. Like fucking Lena Dunham, when she was defending, like, her buddy who was, like, accused of, like, sexual misconduct or something. And then she defended him because, like, she believed he was a good guy. It's just the same thing.
Yeah. So, like, and I'll tell you, again, that kind of stuff, like, to me, it's just like, yeah, that's a reason. That is a good reason for this guy to be put on the back foot. It's an obvious way to fuck somebody over when you're trying not to get rid of them, just to make everybody hate them.
Yes.
And like, what better way was there in this society? It's just I just don't think that there's any reason to get upset about the way this story is told, because the point of it is simply to have something that would put this guy in this situation. So it's like, it could have been anything. The writer could have done whatever they wanted, but like, this is something that would be very effective towards a character in this position of this lifestyle and to the audience who's reading it. And like, yeah, I'm sure that there's a lot of guys who are going to come away from this like, fuck bitches. Like, they're all like, fucking, of course some fucking whore would do that to him. But like, I don't even think the character ultimately feels that way in the long run. And like, he takes good care of a girl throughout the whole story.
Indeed.
You know?
Indeed.
And like, the relationship between them is frankly adorable. I love their relationship. I love that he takes care of this girl and like, sort of, you know, helps her get her life on track, and she becomes like a dedicated warrior to help him, because she's like, yeah, this guy saved me from the situation.
It's great.
And nobody else cares. Like, this is not a situation where it could have just been anyone. Most people in this world are actively racist against demi-humans.
Yeah.
And this guy, because he comes from our world, has no reason to feel that way. And the other guys, because they all know this world and they want to be accepted, they want to live the high life, they want to be like standard citizens here, they're going to toe the line and just believe whatever the people here tell them to believe.
They've literally got non-shield hero privilege, and that is what is holding them up. That is a literal thing that they have in the society. And it's the fact that the shield hero is discriminated against just for being the shield hero, with like rumors about him and stuff, before he does anything or any accusations come in. Like, he can relate to the plight of the demi-humans, and that's why he becomes like a champion for them. It's you know, it's like the same situation.
it's an interesting and powerful message, because I would love it if they ever address this. If they ever address him having like some kind of realization that maybe he wouldn't have been that way if things hadn't gone this way. Like maybe if he had come and he had been accepted, he would have just played along and he would have been just as much of a piece of shit as everybody else. But like, you know, because of the fact that he's been forced into the position of being a bad guy to everybody else, he's like, well, you know, I certainly don't like this society, so why should I agree with it? Why should I share its prejudices?
The fact that the other heroes don't have to go through any of this, like, none of them pay any mind to, like, I don't think any of them are thinking about this world as anything more than, like, a fun isekai world where they can go on adventures and do dope shit and whatnot. None of them ever come into contact in what they're doing with, like, the ills of the society. None of them in their travels like even discover until maybe quite a bit later that like slavery is even there, that the demi-humans are even treated badly. Right. And when Naofumi brings, you know, his slave Raftalia, they perceive him to be, you know, the only bad guy here. But the problem is the system itself. And none of them spend any time thinking about that. They spend time doing other stuff when it's Naofumi who's the one who, you know, this becomes his crusade, his cause.
And of course, we'll be able to get more into this in more depth as the anime gets to those
I don't blame people for not knowing all this, because, this
is
all a lot of it comes later. But nonetheless, that's where it's going. So people out there talking, you know, saying that, well, I mean, if people are just going to say that it's not okay to show any particular issue, like it's wrong to have a story about false accusations. Why is that? That doesn't make any sense. It is real. It could happen, and it's a provocative turn of fucking an event. So just a lot of this seems to come from crusaders who have a particular cause, and they push that cause, and if anything infringes on that, that's, you know, deviant or shouldn't be allowed. And I mean, I think you and I both just reject that outright. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and I mean, I will come out to admit that, like, me being so defensive of this show, this show, as I said earlier, I relate to it because I feel similarly about, like, my place in society, and, like, my mentality towards the world is very fuck you all, you know? So, like, and granted, even I tried to read, like, the fan translations of the light novels back when because I only read, like, 10 chapters of the manga while it was first, like, when it first was coming out. So, I probably haven't read nearly as much as you have.
I think there's, like, 50 now, yeah.
Yeah, so I haven't read much of the manga, and I had tried to read some of the light novels, and the way they are written is so edgy, it is painful.
Oh, yeah?
Because, like, his mental dialogue is just like, oh, these fucking pieces of shit, everyone's a fucking asshole. Like, he's just constantly, like, angry, and, like, that doesn't come through as much in the manga or anime because they don't have as much of his inner monologue.
Yeah,
and, like, you know, I imagine that if you just read the light novels, you would probably picture this world more, like, literally dark. Like, just a bleaker, blacker, more, like, turgid society than what is presented in the manga and anime. And the manga has really nice artwork, and that was part of
the art,
why I like it as well. It's one of those where, like, the manga is a good enough adaptation that it has continued going, you know, that, like, it will probably cover the whole light novel. And interestingly enough, because they're both available in the U.S. From a publisher called One Piece Books.
Okay.
That's Peace, One Piece Books.
Oh,
and it's like all they release. All I've ever seen from them is the Shield Hero manga.
They've got
and light
one
novel.
MGTOW running that whole operation.
But yeah, so, like, it's, you know, it's clearly successful enough that it's gonna go for a while. The anime is not gonna have a conclusion, but they are making 26 episodes, I think. And the first episode was 45 minutes long. I really appreciated that because the first chapter is that long. It's long as fuck, and I think it ends in a good place. So that was a good idea to adapt such a huge amount. But yeah, like, the anime is pretty much just serviceable. It's like, you could watch this, and it adds color and music, and that's cool, but, like, it doesn't add anything else over the manga. And, like, if you read the manga, you get the speed and you get the consistency of the artwork. So it's like, you could really pick either or, and it just depends on what do you like more. If you're more of a manga person, I would say go with the manga. If you're more of an anime person, you can watch the anime. It's fine. It's not any worse per se. you know?
I've got a couple of little nitpicks since we're on this subject now. I mean, I'm a manga guy, as I've said, and I so far, yeah, would definitely pick the manga. And one of the reasons is, one of the things that bothered me, a small thing, but it makes a difference. It's that the character design of Naofumi, like, his face is a little sharper, and I don't like that as much, but that's not the real issue. The real issue is, at the moment of truth, when Naofumi gets his, you know, the accusation and his reputation is completely destroyed, at that moment in the manga, there is a visible design shift in his design where he glares more, and specifically bags appear under his eyes. And I went there and read a bunch. The fact that those bags under his eyes are not included at all in the anime, I think, does a big disservice to making him seem like he's been changed. And he just seems like the same kind of guy, like, visually. And yeah, like, his attitude changes and all that. I just think it's a shame they didn't keep that, because I thought that was very effective.
I'll tell you right now, as somebody who's a huge fan of bags under the eyes, I wouldn't be surprised if part of why I continued reading the manga was for that detail.
I love that detail. It just makes him look like life is just crushing him, and it's a great detail. So that's a shame. That's a shame. And honestly, that's my biggest complaint.
One thing that I think is better in the anime is the skill tree of the shield.
Yeah, I like that stuff a lot.
The way it animates and stuff looks really cool. And, like, I don't want to talk about it too much because we haven't gotten that far into it. We see the rope shield in episode 2, which is pretty cool. I like the way that I just like the rope shield. It's a good idea. But, like, as I understand it, like, how you stack, like, enemies and, like, how you build through this tree becomes a lot more relevant as the story goes on.
Absolutely.
Like, the abilities that the shield develops, like, the more, like, nerdy gamer fans of this manga tend to fixate on that a lot.
I am all about the skill tree. In the manga, I fucking loved it. You don't get him, and seeing him like grind items, feeding into his shield that, like, do unlocks for new abilities. I mean, that's like my favorite thing about playing games, and having that in this series that's, you know, full MGTOW such as myself, it's just a perfect combination. I absolutely love it.
And like, when you watch the scenes in the anime where, like, he'll feed something in, and then you see, like, the flipping.
Oh, it feels so good. It feels so good. That's satisfying as fuck. And knowing that, like, I mean, in a game, when you're playing a game and you unlock a new weapon, you want to switch to it, you want to see what new abilities it has, and so does he. And we connect on that, and it's great. He still is a fucking gamer boy, such as us, and it's a great connection. This is I don't know, like, if I could pick any kind of isekai of any of the ones I've seen, this is definitely, like, my favorite system. Or like, the way it's depicted is my favorite.
I also do think that, like, adding that scene in that explains that those three guys came from other dimensions into the anime is a huge leg up over the manga in just understanding what the hell's going on.
That's true. Like, that is true.
Because in both incarnations, if you don't pick up on the subtle wrongness of the situation, then it does seem like kind of obnoxious that those three guys are so flippant. It's just like, wow, does this system just, like, pick sociopaths? Like, is that the way it works? Because, like, these guys don't even give a fuck at all.
I didn't even understand that until today, and I've been reading the manga for years. So thanks for cluing me in,
I just always had
anime.
assumed that something would, like, I always assumed there would be a reveal when I was reading the manga. Like, because of the fact that it's so obvious that the whole system is rigged against the shield hero, I thought that maybe it had specially chosen people with a certain attitude, and he was somehow an anomaly, or that he is meant to be a counterbalance to them. And like, the anime even does suggest that a little bit, that, like, even in the original light novel that he picks up in the store that teleports him to that world, like, the shield hero is kind of described as, like, being different. And the demi-humans, like, they have a legend that the shield hero was the one who likes the demi-humans. So like, there's clearly some element of, like, the shield hero is deliberately meant to be someone with a different personality from the other people. That's true. But, like, at the very least, we have some legs to stand on why these other guys are the way they are, so it doesn't feel like they just happen to all be fucking assholes, you know?
I wouldn't be surprised if it was something like that. Still sucks that he just didn't fucking know what was going on, but nonetheless. I mean, is that why, like, his reputation as I don't know, like, what even is the conspiracy? I know this was covered in the manga. I just kind of forget. And maybe we shouldn't even address it if it's going to come up later. But obviously there's some conspiracy against the Shield Knight from the start. Yeah. People just don't like him. Obviously, so we know that he, likes demi-humans. That's, his reputation. I guess he also has a reputation of some other negative aspect to the crown. I forget what that is. In fact, I guess we can just address that later.
It'll probably be more fleshed out in the anime even, because I do think that the manga... Clearly, I mean, we can confirm now it skips over details from the book, and the anime seemingly wants to add some of that back in. It is interesting that they even are doing that when, the parts that are the same as the manga are almost exactly the same, even visually. Yeah. They clearly used the manga as the basis for the visuals of the anime. They didn't just make it up off the top of their heads or anything. But
that's for sure, yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting that they would add stuff back in. So I feel like some care is being put into this adaptation, even if it's kind of disappointing visually. I mean, it's not bad. It's above average for today's anime. It's just nowhere near Made in Abyss.
I mean, every once in a while, yeah. I mean, really, that's the thing. I overhyped myself a little bit for the visuals, knowing that this was by Made in Abyss guys. And I mean, the director was not the same. I looked this up. The director was let me see here. I've got it. Takao Abo, who worked on Bebop in animation and Eureka 7. He actually directed some of the episodes.
Everybody worked on... Kinema Citrus is a studio that broke off from Bones. So, the idea that he would have worked on those shows probably just because he's been a Bones/Sunrise guy since the 90s, and
fair enough.
Just worked his way up to director over the years. But
I mean, just remember the trance we were in when we saw that quote-unquote Ghibli-esque animation from Made in Abyss Episode 1. God, that was magical. We didn't get there, but
maybe we can count on more consistency. Maybe we can count on this never dipping,
The manga was very consistent. So if they just don't slow it down at any time, and I thought the manga really did a great job of keeping my interest every chapter. Yeah, could be good.
To address just the OP really quick, I don't like it, and it's mostly because of the sound palette. I don't even mind the rap.
It's rough.
I think the song would be fine if they just chose different instruments. It just sounds really cheap and shitty, and it kind of sounds like it was made with when you open up FL Studio and it has the 4 default bass, kick, snare, cymbals. If you just use the ones that are there when you open the program, that's what it sounds like. Yeah, it's the equivalent of using Apple loops that are built into GarageBand.
I'm not a fan. What can I say?
It just sounds like ass. The ED was fine.
Yeah, the ending was fine.
Yeah. Well, do you have anything else to add? I know you have notes.
I mean, I had some note. We touched most of what I wanted to talk about. Now for me being a bitch right from the start, we talked about. I mean, I know some CG here and there. It's just, man, I miss Made in Abyss, but that's okay. I don't know. Oh yeah, I mean, I thought it was cool. This is a small point, but the foreshadowing about that actually some of it's revealed later. But finding out all the ways that Mine, I think her name's Mine, whatever it is, the girl who fucks him over. She it is revealed that she fucked him over by even though they were in a party, they weren't actually partied, so all the experience that she was getting,
and he had no idea.
He had no idea that was even a thing, and he just finds out later. He's like, God, that fucking bitch, she got me on that too. It's a yeah, I don't know.
It adds a layer to how calculated it all is. That
indeed.
Because every time something happens to him, he's blindsided by it. So from his perspective, it's just well, I got fucked over. But then when he looks back and sees the mechanism of how he was fucked over, it's wow, I was really fucked over.
He sure was.
If I had known anything, and if anybody had tried to help me at all, then this wouldn't have gone this way. You know?
And I guess that it wouldn't have been possible if he had knowledge of this world. So just from a writing perspective, they had to make this guy so he hadn't played any of this stuff before. By the way, I suppose, just to go back to a point I made before, on my, this guy turns dark real fast when these things happen, and specifically one line is when he says something along the lines of, basically this verbatim, it's when he's going to the slave shop with that guy who's turning him on to the slaves, he says, slaves aren't people, they are tools. And okay, I understand what you're saying, but that's a weird thing to say, to completely throw out all the morality you've ever had and be willing to just justify slavery because like there's
I
no
had just been under
moral
the impression
equation
that
there.
He
It's
was
just,
trying to like just say what he thought that guy would want to hear. Like,
we could infer that, I suppose. I don't know if we know that for
that's
sure.
just like the vibe that I got out of a lot of his dialogue is that like he's trying to look like he's playing along so that he won't be like questioned, you know?
Maybe.
But that's just a vibe I always got from that scene. Because, I mean, and again, it does seem different when you consider what he thinks about her in the light novel.
Yeah,
but like
exactly.
the way he treats her would not indicate that he feels that way at all.
No,
you know?
no. Yeah, I mean, it does, like, but that's the weird thing. He delivers those lines so quickly and with such conviction. It feels real edgy, but then when we see his actual character with her, he feels far less, like he's just a sweetheart. He, you know, I mean, he's just treating her like he would treat any little girl, like, back from his world. You know, whatever, nice to her, buys her stuff. But, you know, he's going to force her to do the job.
It's possible that he's also just, like, lying to himself because he's trying to like be dark, you know. He's like, oh, this world is so fucked. Oh, I'm gonna embrace that and act as fucked as possible. But like, it's not in his nature, so it just doesn't really come through in his actions, you know.
I think, yeah, you know, I guess I'll say that I feel like it's developed kind of a complex character, but due to bad writing is kind of how I like. They just introduced two conflicting things, and I don't feel it was intentional. But
I had always felt that it was like when I read the manga, I had the impression that he was just putting on a facade of edginess for this guy. But like, maybe that's just me trying to justify it in my own brain.
Maybe
it's debatable.
I mean, and we know that he's a good person who like respects human life. I guess it's just that, I don't know, when he like walks into a slave shop, there's no shot of him like recoiling like, holy fuck, these are like literal slaves. Like, why are they slaves again? Aren't these like conscious guys who like don't want to be here? He's just like, whatever.
I mean,
it's
kind of like a Kirito thing where it's like, after Kirito becomes a beater, it's like nothing can impress or affect him anymore. He's just like permanent scowl, like, oh, like, people died. Well, that happens.
I don't want to be too harsh on him.
Novel.
He has gone through a traumatic experience, so like that might have like maybe like when you're like super pissed off about something and someone like comes up to you and is like, hey, help, like my kite's stuck in a tree, you're gonna be like, fuck off, I've got my own problems. I don't give a shit. Just die. Why don't you die with your fucking kite in that tree? So, you know, maybe it was a little bit like that. Use
a string on that kite to hang yourself from that.
And then the kite fucking comes loose and like drifts like with them hanging off the string, off the kite through the sky. Yes, this is the kind of content we need, people. Yes. Yeah, well, I guess that's it. His edginess is fine. Like, this is peak edgy. It's just gonna go down from here. So
that's the funny thing about it too, is that like the story starts in a very edgy, dark place, but again, he never really does anything edgy. Like, he's always a good guy. Like, aside from the things he says, and you know, I'm a big proponent of the idea that like, don't take people at what they say, take them at what they do. You know, like, people will say anything that makes them feel right in the moment, but like, if he never actually does anything bad, then he's not even really an anti-hero, you know. Like, the worst he does is that he like gets back at people who are trying to fuck him over, like, you know, putting the monsters on the faces of the merchants and stuff. Like, you could see that as cruel and mean, but they were trying to dick him over. Or like taking a demi-human into a place you're not supposed to have them. Well, like, in the context of that society, he looks like a douchebag, but like in the context of us as viewers, we obviously think they are wrong to have those rules. So it's like, in the context of of the world he's an anti-hero, but from our perspective, he's just a hero.
That's true. And I guess that's really all there is to say about it. His actions speak louder than his words. He's not a bad guy. And just by the way he treats, I suppose there'd be some people who just say, I mean, and I sort of get it, just because he's purchased a slave, that makes him a bad guy. I get it. I get what you're saying. Owning a conscious creature is not a good thing to do, but you know, I guess I'm forced to make it for the greater good argument because he needs this to happen. I mean, he's not gonna...
I will also say that, like, and I keep forgetting to bring this up.
Yeah.
I do think there is obviously a fetishistic element to this, and if that's what bothers you, I understand. Because, like,
I guess.
It's also just hot that he, like, the master-slave relationship, the, like, basically like grooming a lolly to be his waifu, like, I definitely think that's intentional, and I like it.
I mean,
personally,
fair enough. But like, he doesn't even think of her that way until she like becomes an adult, which happens
right. But
quite
I mean,
shortly
like
anyway.
the fact that that happens, and I don't want to spoil what's going on, but like when that happens, it's very much a like, oh, okay, I see how you got away with this kind of moment. You know,
I suppose.
I really think this show manages to make him having a lolly slave girl who will do anything that he says and love him unconditionally. They figured out how to make that acceptable within a story, but it doesn't obviate what I know they're doing. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to accept that there's fetishism going on here or whatever. I mean, yeah, certainly possible. Wouldn't be surprised at all. I get it. I guess that's it, though. I don't think I have anything else for now.
Oh, we went for a straight hour. So there's
Not
your
bad.
introduction to Shield Hero Weekly. We'll be back next week at some point, whenever we can, to talk about episode 3 once it's out.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, hopefully everybody's like, yeah, this was a reasonable discussion, and not, of course these fucking MGTOWs would love this show. Again, we both gave it like a flat 7 though, so it's not even like 7. I'm not even saying the show's amazing. I just think it's really interesting.
I'd read the manga. It's the same story but faster. Though it does miss some of the information. That's true. So this might be the definitive package once it's all done. I don't know. I just love that speed of reading manga. That does a lot for me. But whatever. Gonna watch more, and I'm excited to do so.
All right, everybody. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.